Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we go. Coronavirus might have a grip on you. Yours truly, Mark Mancini, 347-205-9631, producing this great show out of Cleveland, Ohio. It's the American Sports History Podcast, hosted by my good friend Peter Ray. Without further ado, let me give him the podium, the mic, and the red carpet. First of all, Peter, how are you? Second of all, how can people get a hold of you and run with this nice Cleveland show?
I'm fine, Mark, doing very well. And I have a YouTube channel. It's called Peter J. Ray, R-E-A. I've made 673 history videos, including every year in Cleveland baseball history, going back to 1869, 171 videos. And I have a website. It's called Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray. Now, tonight, I have some things I wanted to talk about. And the first topic is historical discrimination in MLB, NFL, and NBA. Now, the first MLB. If you go back the early years of pro baseball, it goes back to before the Civil War they were playing, and then really the beginning of pro baseball was in 1869 when the Cincinnati Reds, they had a team that was, they were all paid, and they traveled across the country. And they were not in a league per se, but they played Cleveland, and they won every game. And it's a wonderful historical novel about that. If I never get back, by Darrell Brock. And then 1871, you had the National Association, which was the first pro league. You know, teams in different cities in the northeastern part of the United States. And then, of course, the National League in 1876, which has been around since then. The American League, 1901, again, been around since then. Now, the thing is, the point I'm trying to make is, MLB made a decision at one point to ignore 19th century baseball. And in the 19th century, the game was changing. You know, they had the distance between the pitcher's mound, or actually it was a box, and home plate changed. At one point, I think they had different rules for balls and strikes, and you could actually catch the ball in a bounce, I think, once. So the rules were changing. So the MLB said, well, we're going to ignore 19th century baseball, and we're going to act as if baseball started in 1901 when the two leagues started. And see, this is wrong. What they did was wrong, and it hurts people, and it hurt those guys who played. You know, their careers were slighted. They were disrespected. And in Cleveland won the 1895 MLB championship. It was called the what was the name? Temple Cup. But it was basically a World Series, or what they used to call in the 19th century the World Championship Series. And that knowledge in Cleveland is almost unknown because of this historical discrimination by MLB to ignore 19th century baseball and act as, oh, that wasn't real baseball. No, see, that's a bunch of nonsense, and that has to be changed. For example, in 1895, the Cy Young was the ace pitcher for the Cleveland Spiders. He won 35 games, and, of course, the Cy Young Award is named after him. And there's a lot of wonderful things. John McGraw, who played famous later as the manager of the New York Giants, he was a player in the 1890s in a rival with Cleveland, a big rivalry, Baltimore Orioles and Cleveland Indians, or Cleveland Spiders, and you had, and so that's that sport. There needs to be more. MLB needs to acknowledge the champions of those years. And what they're doing is wrong. Now, the NFL, same thing. Now, the NFL goes back to 1920. And in fact, actually, there's been almost a total ignoring of pre-NFL pro baseball, which was the Ohio League, and which goes way back early 20th century. And before the NFL, you had the Ohio League, which was a pro league of small towns in Ohio. Canton was one of them. And of course, it's really why the NFL started in Canton. Now, the NFL was started in 1920, and there were rival leagues that came and went. A number of them called the American Football League, AFL, and of course we know that I think the last strong rivalry league was the USFL. Before that, the WFL, where Larry Zonka and Jim Kick and Paul Warfield joined, and then actually the main rival league was the AFL, the last AFL, which joined which started play in the 60s. And you had these two leagues playing. You had in the 60s, the early 60s, and you had an AFL champion and an NFL champion. And then they decided to, they were at war for a while, and then they decided to negotiate and have peace. And then the AFL joined, and then they had the AFL NFL championship game, which was the first Super Bowl. And they said, all right. And then, the AFL joined the NFL, and most of the AFL teams became AFC teams, and the NFL teams became NFC teams, and then they were both in the NFL. And then actually there were more teams in the NFL, so some had to leave. That's why Cleveland, which was an old NFL team going way back, joined the AFC. And then the thing is, what the NFL has done, they said, 1966 season is the first Super Bowl. See, this is terrible. Okay, Super Bowl I with Roman numerals, which is a terrible way of describing it. It's a year. You identify sports teams by years. I'm a historian. Roman numeral doesn't mean anything. And by having it called Super Bowl I, it implies that this was the beginning. And so a lot of people don't even know about pre-Super Bowl NFL. That's 46 years. That's totally disrespectful of the guys who played pre-NFL. Now, when the Philadelphia Eagles won their first Super Bowl, it was not their first NFL title. There were 46 NFL titles pre-Super, and I believe Philadelphia won 2. So I remember LeBron James tweeted, congratulations to the Eagles for winning your first title. And no, it wasn't their first title. It's so disrespectful. And so they want to call it, so the NFL really needs to do more to, that whole Super Bowl naming, changing that, because basically the NFL is the Super Bowl is the NFL championship game. Now, this hits home again for me personally, even more than the Cleveland Spiders, that forgotten championship team, because the Cleveland Browns started in the All-American Football Conference in 1946, another rival league. It only lasted 4 years. Cleveland won the championship every year with Paul Brown. They joined the NFL in 1950, and the NFL commissioner, something Bell, he said, the Browns are champions of the Humpty Dumpty League. Now, the first game of the season, 1950, they had the NFL champions Philadelphia Eagles playing the AFC champions Cleveland Browns. And Cleveland won the game big, like 35-10 or something. Otto Graham, the Browns quarterback, they said the guys were mad like hell. There's no respect. And he said, we would have played that game for nothing. They're professionals; they get paid. He said we would have played that game for nothing. The guys would have played that game for a keg of beer, or in my case, Otto Graham's case, a chocolate milkshake, since he didn't drink. So what I'm trying to say is the Browns joined the NFL. They won their first year in the league. So much for champions of the Humpty Dumpty League. Cleveland joined the NFL, won the NFL title their first year in 1950. First 6 years in the NFL, they played in the championship game every year. Otto Graham had a 10-year career. Every year from 46 to 55, he played in a pro football championship game. 4 years in the AAFC, 6 in the NFL. Now in Cleveland, because of this historical discrimination and plus because of what the NFL did, naming Super Bowls and implying the NFL started in 1966. In Cleveland, because of that ignorance and that wrongdoing, and because of negative thinking, here in Cleveland, I grew up. I became a Browns fan in 1972 when I was 12, and all I heard was people say, "Oh, the Browns, we won this." All they would talk about is the '64 title game, which was, of course, pre-NFL, but they knew about it. But everything else, we only won, and we've never played in the Super Bowl, blah blah, all this stuff. And there was no knowledge, really, that Cleveland Browns had played in 10 championship games from 46 to 55 and won 7 of them. Not only that, the year before, in 45, the NFL Cleveland Rams won the NFL title before they moved to L.A. 1924, the Cleveland Bulldogs won the NFL title. There's a silver football at the Football Hall of Fame in Canton. Cleveland Bulldogs. And so, again, same thing. The NFL has been disrespectful of pre-Super Bowl NFL championships. 46 years of guys playing and achieving, totally disrespected. NBA, same thing. In the NBA, the NBA started in 1946. Okay, and this same thing. Okay, they act like the pro basketball started in 1946. It did not start in 1946. In fact, the first national, there was a league in New York, all New York City teams, but the first league, which was a number of cities playing each other professionally in basketball, was the American Basketball League, which started in 1925-26. And the first pro basketball dynasty was the Cleveland Rosenblums, who won the ABL championships in 1926, 1928, or 26, 29, and 30, or 20. Anyways, the first 3 out of the first 5 years, Cleveland Rosenblums won the NBA, almost no ABL title. The first pro league, first pro basketball dynasty was the Cleveland Rosenblums. Now very few people in Cleveland know. They have no idea. When I was a kid, it's like, oh, the Cavs have never even played in the finals. No knowledge of, Dan Gilbert, owner of the Cavs. A lot of people here in Cleveland, they think, they don't like Dan Gilbert because the average fan doesn't like the owners. And I don't have any problems with Dan Gilbert's ownership. But except for 2 things. One, he pulled the Cleveland Rockers out of the WNBA, which was wrong, and I totally disagreed with, because having a WNBA team meant we had a chance at a championship in the WNBA, and the Cleveland Rockers were a contender, and then he folds the team. Now, the other thing, I wrote to Dan Gilbert, and I said, listen, Cleveland won 3 championships, the Cleveland Rosenblums, 26, 29, and 30, and 1926, 29, and 30. And there ought to be 3 banners hanging from the ceiling of what's now called Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, formerly Quicken Loans Arena, formerly Gund Arena. And I wrote to him twice or 3 times. He never heard back. So, golly gee whiz, no good. And again, this is clear. He's like, he doesn't care. And the NBA doesn't care about pre-NBA pro basketball. It's horrible. In fact, in 1961, Cleveland Pipers won a championship in another league. I think it was another, I don't know the name of the league, but Cleveland Pipers. George Steinbrenner, the owner. So anyway, those are the things that I wanted to lay out there for people to think about. Now I'm losing my breath talking too much, so I have to slow down a little bit here. Okay, now the other thing I want to bring up, that's something that's dear to my heart. I started an organization called the Universal Sports Fan, and 2004, around that time, I was in the Philippines. Now, the thing is, the average fan, people tend to be selfish. They just think about their own team. And back in 1986, my brother, I grew up here in Cleveland. My brother had moved to Boston, and he became a big Boston fan. And then, so I was jealous because their teams were better. The Celtics won the championship around that time. And anyway, the World Series came 1986. Mets Red Sox, and I was jealous of my brother. I rooted for the Mets. Mets won, and then later I thought I was thinking like, geez. And then I realized sometime later this knowledge came to me that the Red Sox had last won a World Series in 1918, which means in 1986 they'd had a 68-year title drought. Now, a title drought is a length of time that a city has, in my definition, has been waiting for a championship. And the longest title drought, which came to an end, was the Cubs in 2016, which was 108 years, going from 1908 to 2016. And actually, what's funny is when I started this organization, I said, if the Indians play the Cubs in the World Series, I'm going to root for the Cubs because their title drought is 40 years longer. Well, when the time came, it actually happened. Indians played the Cubs, and Cubs won a tough 7-game series. Now I think, well, in the grand scheme of things, it's better. I know Indians fans won't be happy for me to say it, but anyway, it's over. We should try to see good things, see the good. And the good thing is that those folks had a 108-year title drought ended, so 40 years is a long time. And now, so where do we stand now with title droughts? Washington Nationals ended the city of Washington had a title drought in baseball going back to 1924. So last year they won it in 2019. So you take 76 and 19. That's now let's see if I can do math in my head. I think that's 95-year title drought. Wonderful, tremendous. Now at the current moment, Cleveland has the longest baseball title drought going back to 1948. So I would propose to, so that's 52, that's 72 years. So my proposal is for listeners out there anywhere in our wonderful country, the United States of America. Now, if the playoffs come, or if we get there in MLB, and if Cleveland is in the playoffs and they're not playing your team, wherever team it may be, you might consider rooting for Cleveland because we have the longest title drought. That was the whole point is, underdog, instead of like rooting for these, don't root for the Yankees, don't root for these, a lot of people do that. They they give up on their team. Like here in Cleveland, in Cleveland we have people rooting for the Steelers. They're traitors. It's terrible. Or you got Yankee fans all over the world who root for the Yankees just because they're, this great team, the greatest team in MLB history. Don't do that. It's like Rudy, and David and Goliath. Don't root for Goliath. Root for David. So, so I hope folks would consider. Now, besides Cleveland, the next team would be the Milwaukee. They won their last MLB title in 1957, Milwaukee Braves, before they moved to Atlanta. And, of course, they got the Brewers later. After that would be the Astros. The Astros did win a few years ago. Padres, they became a team in 69, haven't won a title ever. So that's a long time. That's like 51 years. Seattle hasn't won a title. They had a team. They had the Pilots in 1969. Texas Rangers, no title, started in 72. Pittsburgh Pirates going back to 79 and so forth. Now in the NFL, the longest title drought is Detroit Lions. They won their last NFL title in 1957. So I would submit that in the playoffs, fans could, if there's an NFL season and if Detroit makes it. Oh, by the way, I'm open to callers. Anyone want to call? I don't see it. The lines aren't exactly ringing off the hook. So anybody want to call in, please feel free to do so. Okay, so the Detroit Lions have a title draw going back to 1957. So that's 63 years. So if they make the playoffs, if you're not a Lions fan and the Lions are playing and they're not playing against your team, you might consider rooting for them. Now, other teams to consider in the playoffs would be the Minnesota Vikings, who, they have never won a title. And they 1961, they lost 4 Super Bowls in the 70s. That was very, very tough. Fran Tarkenton. Houston, now they won an AFL title in 61, and then, of course, they had the Oilers, and now they're the Texans again. And so you might consider rooting for them. San Diego Chargers, well, now they're gone. They're in L.A. Cleveland Browns, 1964, last title. You might consider rooting for them. Buffalo Bills lost 4 Super Bowls in a row. What could be worse than that? That's horrible. So anyway, fans, if you're not a Bills fan and the Bills made the playoffs, root for the Bills. Good grief. What could be worse than losing 4 Super Bowls in a row? Atlanta Falcons, 66. Oh, no, they did win they didn't win. No, they lost a real tough Super Bowl. That was the worst thing ever because they had a big lead late. Oh my God! You got to feel for the Falcons and root for them if they're in the playoffs. Cincinnati Bengals, 68, no titles, lost 2 Super Bowls. 68 Jets. With Joe Namath, they played the Super Bowl early 69. And so forth. Now, if you go to basketball, Cleveland Cavaliers. Well, the Cavs did win 2016, so they're knocked off. Minnesota Timberwolves. Minneapolis last won a title in 1954. The Minneapolis Lakers. That was an early dynasty. They won a number of. And by the way, the L.A. Lakers got to stop wearing MPLS. They're like, oh, this is part of our tradition. It's not part of your tradition. It's part of Minneapolis' tradition. And, in fact, the Minnesota Timberwolves ought to hang on the rafters of their indoor arena the titles for the Minneapolis Lakers titles before they moved to L.A. because they were won in Minneapolis, not in L.A., so they shouldn't be doing that. They should be hanging, even though it's a different franchise. Denver Nuggets, 68, no titles. Folks ought to root for them. Atlanta Hawks, same thing. NBA is terrible. It's like a big hogging by the Celtics and Lakers, which really makes it terrible. LeBron leaving Cleveland, and going to L.A. What the hell's wrong with that guy? I thought he grew up. Apparently all he cared about was himself and being with the movie stars in L.A. Okay, fine, LeBron. All you care about is yourself. All right, so let's see. Phoenix Suns, no title, started in 69. Milwaukee Bucks, 71. Last title with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Indiana Pacers last title at 73 in the ABA title for the merger. New York Knicks, last title 73, long time. New Orleans had a 75. They were the Jazz, and so forth. So those are. I'm not a big hockey fan, so I can't tell you much. I think the Blackhawks had the longest title drought, which I believe came to Toronto Maple Leafs in '67. I think I don't know if they've won or not, Toronto Maple Leafs. So those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about, and the thing is really, the title of this show is American Sports History, and I would just encourage, if you're a fan of baseball, and you go to my YouTube channel, if you can look up, everyone has probably, when you're a kid, you start following the team. For me, in 1973, I was very late getting it. I became a big, obsessed, super diehard sports fan. The last two games of the 72 regular season baseball at a doubleheader, Indians, Orioles at Cleveland Municipal Stadium, and Brooks Robinson, guys like that. And anyway, 73 was my first year. Oh my! So anyway, for the average person, you really love. To me, I think a lot of guys, what's important to you is those teams when you were a kid. So if you want to go to my YouTube channel, Peter J. Ray, or my website, American Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray, you can go to this playlist, Cleveland Baseball, and you can go to the year, and it's not your team, whoever you are in the country, if you're all over the country, but you can go to the year, and I do talk a lot in those videos about MLB in general, not just Cleveland. Obviously, it's a lot about Cleveland, but it's about the season, the All-Star Game, memorable stuff, especially the postseason, with the World Playoffs, World Series, and memorable guys from the All-Star Game, memorable guys from the stars from that season. So, if you follow a team, it's not just the team you follow, but it's the sport itself. So you probably did watch the World Series. If you're my age, I'm 60, then stuff like the 70s is amazing. The Oakland A's dynasty, unbelievable team. Cool guys with mustaches, Catfish Hunter, Reggie Jackson, Gene Tennis, Joe Rudy making the catch against the left field wall, and then the Big Red Machine, right, with and the 75 World Series, incredible Red Sox Reds and Louis Tiana, and in Game 6, Carlton Fisk hitting the ball, game walk-off home run, and then the Yankees. Oh my God, what a Yankees! Look at Catfish and Reggie. 5 titles between them between the A's and the Yankees. Tremendous team. Catfish Hunter, Reggie, Roy White, Lou Piniella, Bucky Dent, Greg Nettles, and Chris Chambliss from Cleveland. It was terribly hurt. Chris Chambliss putting the Yanks in the '76 series with a blast, and not even able to step on home plate because they pulled up second base by the time he got there. He never touched third or home. He's running for his life to get off the field. And then, 77, 78, and 79, the Pirates, we are a family. So anyway, if you go to my YouTube channel, Peter J. Ray, REA, and you go to the Cleveland playlist, you can go to the year. It's Cleveland Indians, actually they have Negro League teams and pre-Indians, Cleveland Naps and Spiders and so forth. But anyway, you can find, not that anybody would be old enough to be interested in that because those people have all died who would have been interested, our grandparents and great-grandparents. But you can go to that year and you might enjoy it. And again, we haven't had baseball or sports here. Look at what's been going on. Half of March, April, May, June. Now we're into July, and it's all bullshit. I'm sorry. Scratch that. It's all, you can't, what are you going to do? Can't even go to the games, and so. But anyway, the sports history, it's amazing how many books have been written in American sports history, and all these biographies, tremendous. So many beautiful stories. One of my favorite stories had to do with Cy Young, and the 1895 Spiders, and actually when Cy Young was like a rookie, and he had a veteran catcher, Chief Zimmer, and Cy Young crossed up Zimmer on a pitch, and Zimmer got hit. So Zimmer comes out to the mound. That was a violent era, very violent time, and so Young is expecting this guy to really, yell at him, be very angry. Chief Zimmer goes out to the mound. He says, now, young fella, Cy Young, we got these signs here, and you got to pay attention, and whatever pitch I call, you need to throw that pitch. So everything works out fine. And he goes back to behind the plate. And Cy Young wrote in his wonderful biography of him, he said, at that moment, I decided that Chief Zimmer was the finest human being on the face of the earth. Now, isn't that so beautiful? The thing, so many stories. Louis Tiant, who was, Tiant was from Cuba. And, he got signed by Cleveland playing minor league ball in the South, experiencing racism in the American South. He was black. And in the winters, he's playing in Mexico, Mexican winter ball. He gets a call from his father, like 1961. His dad says, don't come home. Fidel Castro's the communist revolution was stopping people from leaving. And Louis Tiant did not see his parents for like 13 years. Very, very painful. This poor fella, he's going through all this stuff in the South. He finally gets up to Cleveland, and then later he's with Boston. 75 World Series. And George McGovern, that I'm not very fond of, but he's in Cuba because he's a communist himself, and he talks to Castro. Says, can you let Louis Tiant's parents out of Cuba to see their son? He's on a, and they made it to the World Series. They let Castro, to his credit, although he's a very evil guy, one of the evil men in history, but he let Louis Tiant's parents leave Cuba. And they came, and his dad threw out the first pitch in the game, and they saw their son in the World Series, and they both died. His parents were elderly. They both died like the next year. They had like a year together. So that's such a beautiful story. And then Tiant, who'd been through an awful lot in his life, they had this beautiful quote by Louis Tiant at the end of one of these books I was reading, I think a couple books on the 75 World Series, where he says, in life we have two pockets, the winning pocket and the losing pocket, and we need to carry both with dignity. Such a wonderful human being, Louis Tiant, funny guy, and so many tremendous stories. That's another one, and beautiful, inspiring stories. Now apparently next week we have Nilay Engen-Wheat, who's an engineer and belly dancer. Just imagine. Now I forgot at the beginning of the show I was going to talk about some new shows on the Stables.network by Mark Mancini. So many wonderful people. There's a new show coming up. It's called Speak Your Mind Podcast. I do not know the time or date of that. Another show is All Access Texas with Ashley Holt and Alexa Belcastro, 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Debuting July 15th. That's tomorrow on the radio. Another show, Control the Zone Podcast out of Phoenix, Arizona with Cactus Jack Howell, 4 to 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, also starting tomorrow. Now, some other shows, we have a lot of shows in the pipeline. 27 shows are in the pipeline. Now, it's shows that currently are on Snowman in the Morning, 5 to 7 a.m. on, I think that's Monday through Friday, with Brian Snow, 5 to 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Another show is Marked Men Madness from 5 to 6 p.m. with Mark Heffernan and Mark Mancini. Another show is Charlotte Bats Baseball and More, 3 to 4 p.m. with Rick Curti. Another one is Motivational Message Mondays, 3 to 4:30 p.m. Jennifer S. Madison. Another show, Boroughs of New York, 4 to 5 p.m. Mike Asso, Bill Savarese, Alan Wu, Mike Asso, and Bill Savarese. Another one is Sunshine State Sports Jabber, 5 to 6 p.m. with Bradley Walker. Another show is Naptown Nation, 6 to 7 p.m. John Guy, Eli Rasevich, and Peggy Palmer. On Tuesday, those are all Monday shows. Tuesday against Snowman in the Morning, and then ATL Prime Sports, 1 to 1:30 p.m. with Todd Corder, John Jurovich, and Stephanie Stallworth. Another show, Vegas Girls Vibes, 12 to 1 p.m., Kimberly Houston and Jennifer Bell Castro. And, of course, my show, American Sports History, from 5 to 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday by Peter J. Ray. Another show, MLB Diamond Talk, Coast to Coast, to 6 to 6:30 with Mike Paternoster and Damian McGlynn. Another show, Bear All MMM, 3 to 4 p.m., Marianne Castro, Mark Mancini, Jennifer Madison. Okay, and Wednesdays, well, I guess we won't get into Wednesdays. We're out of time. And, dear listeners, I certainly appreciate your time and wish you well. And I'd like to close by saying to you, dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. God bless you, everybody. As Joe Tate used to say on Cleveland Indians radio broadcaster, have a good night, everybody.